All right, welcome guys. Juan here, and we are at a counselor's journey. And the journey that we're going to dive into today is connected to the guy right here, Mr. Jeff Beers, who's a licensed marriage family therapist. Jeff, tell everyone a little bit about yourself and your private practice.
Okay, glad to be here. Nice to meet you, Juan. So I'm a marriage and family therapist. I'm based in Asheville, North Carolina. I've been a therapist for about 7 years now. And before that, I worked in a counseling capacity with teenagers. So I've been doing some form of this work for more than 10 years, let's say. Right now, I'm in private practice. And my work is a mix of people that I see. You know, as a marriage and family therapist, I'm thinking about relationships, and that describe who I see. You know, I see couples, I will work with parents and children together, but it's also about how I think about people's distress, maybe when they come in, or hopes or issues that they bring to therapy. You know, I'm thinking about how does this issue affect other areas of their life. I'm thinking about how does this come out of old relationships they had, maybe childhood relationships, family relationships, school relationships. And, you know, I'm the kind of therapist where I'm thinking that you come in my office by yourself in one way, but you bring your whole world with you.
I like that.
Yeah, thank you. As far as, you know, people sort of always ask, what's my specialty? And I like to say that I'm a proud generalist in a way, meaning that my interest is what's going on with people underneath whatever you call your problem. Mm-hmm. You know, what are the struggles that you experience that maybe come out as depression, or they come out as anxiety, or they come out as hoarding, or they come out as, you know, conflict in relationships. I'm interested in what are the things that are happening inside someone and in their relationships, maybe that appear as those things. So it's true that I'm kind of a proud generalist, and beyond that, my work has taken a couple of forms of who I tend to see. You know, one area is with adolescents and teens. I love that work. It's very interesting, and I'm one of those people who loves teens and they're kind of a pain, and all of their amazing growth and ups and downs. You know, it's fun for me. I'm probably still a teenager on the inside.
Yeah.
I also see couples, and I find that really, really interesting and meaningful. But a big area of my work has been in seeing men and women, but primarily men, who struggle with reactivity or, you know, harmful reactions to other people. Sometimes physically harmful, but more often, you know, men who are attempting to kind of get their needs met, or build their relationships, or deal with troubles in a way that causes more damage than anything else, and verbal harm or other things that cause chaos and difficulty in their lives, and then they end up feeling kind of alone as a result. I frequently work with men who want to change those kinds of patterns.
That's awesome, Jeff. I mean, it sounds like you have such a rich experience, you know, a decade just about, where you're integrating all the way from teens to couples. And I do that. I know for me, it keeps me alive, if you will, where you have like these, you know, teens in there, and they're talking about apps like TikTok. And I'm like, Tick who? You want to play? You want to play a game? They're like, no, Juan. This is an app. It's kind of like Instagram, which is great for me. I have young kids, so it's like I tell my wife, I'm staying sharp. That way, when my kids get to that age, I know the lingo. Cool, Dad. There we go.
There you go.
I want to ask you. I hope. I wanted to ask you, right? So you've been doing this for close to a decade, and you're in your private practice, and you're in Asheville, which is awesome because I'm in Greensboro, so we're pretty close to each other. What are your fundamental strategies to, you know, get someone out there in the community to come visit you?
You know, therapy is an interesting thing to market or to kind of talk to people about, because you know, I know for me, I struggled with this over time, because I said, I don't want to be a snake oil salesman out there saying, the kind of get well quick scheme. I don't want to be sounding like that, because for me, change is possible, but it's a murky process. There's no kind of, you might find relief quickly, but the kind of lifetime of change and of knowing ourselves and of feeling secure in our lives is longer term work. So I was never comfortable with that, and what I've found feels right to me, and what works and bears out in how people come to me, is that the best possible thing is that someone gets a sense of who I am, mm-hmm. and what it's like to talk to me, and what it's like to work with me in therapy. And there's one way I do that is through my website. I spent quite a bit of time trying to write it in a way that felt genuine to me. Yeah. I'm frequently revisiting. I have a profile on Psychology Today, which is as a very commonly used database or mm-hmm. directory. And I often revisit that and say, does this still sound like me? Does this still feel right? Does it still sound like my voice? And so that's one way, is to make sure that at least the best I can do, what I'm saying in writing won't be too different from if you actually talk to me.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I kind of want to dive into those two real quick before we keep going. So as far as anyone out there listening, Psychology Today, that connects to like Good Therapy, TheraVibe. Those are what we, right, clinicians, mental health professionals, all the way from psychologists to even psychiatrists, I believe, we used to say, hey, this is who I am. Here's a picture of me. Here's a bio of me. And this is how a potential client in the community can do a Google search and find me. And then you're also utilizing your website. Now, what I really liked about your comment was that on your website and on your Psychology Today, instead of like just something generic out there, you're trying to put yourself out there. You're trying to say, this is me, so that whenever someone, right, whenever if Juan's looking for a counselor, and I'm like, man, the way that this guy speaks, I connect to that. And then when I come to see you, it's the same person.
Yeah, that's important to me, because to me, so much of our work in therapy is about integrity, and I don't mean that from a moral standpoint. It's more that so much of our suffering comes from this disconnect between our inside and our outside. There's a disconnect between what we want and what we do, or what we accept and what we don't accept, and there's these disconnects, and so therapy often is about bringing things together and integrating and resolving the conflicts. And I don't want there to be a conflict between my website self and my, in-person self. And I don't want it to be that someone finds that it's jarring in that way. And it might happen, I can't guarantee that it won't, but it's a value of mine that it would be, it would feel like I was honest from the beginning. Or I feel like I get a sense of who I am.
I love that. I think, I know in my experience, whether it's through consultation or even clients that I work with, sometimes people are up at 2 or 3 in the morning and they're reading your website, reading your bio. And it's so important just not to put something general on there, but to say, this is me. Because, outside of the books that we read, the education that we have, we are who we are. And it's so important for us to put that authentic, genuine self out there, so that whoever we're going to work with, they're able to say, yeah, I get this person. It's a good fit.
Yeah, I really agree with that. One of the ways I love to say is that we are our own instrument. I have an interest in woodworking and furniture making and things awesome. Like that. And it's more of it's an unpaid creative love, And I have all kinds of tools that I know when I don't maintain them, it's a lot harder to get what I want out of them. And it's no different, I think, for us as therapists, that we are our own instrument, and our own work on our own difficulties or conflicts is essential for us to do good work. And I know that if there are people who are watching this who are interested in being a therapist, or who are are just sort of therapists themselves who are developing. My primary sort of invitation is to sort of just continue the part where you always ask yourself, what's going on with me? And why do I do this? And what's this for? And what's working about this? Where am I getting stuck?
Yeah.
And to me, you need other people involved with that too. But I think that the being your genuine self, to me, is what's transformative for my clients, that I am who I am in a boundaried way, in a professional way, in a way that doesn't mix up the relationships. And I'm still someone's therapist and not their friend, or not their lover, or not their,
Yeah, none of those.
There's none of that, but the some of what you feel about me is who I am.
Yeah. It reminds me of, you probably heard of the concept of building your avatar, right? Of like your ideal client. Who is this individual? What do they look like? Where do they live? What do they struggle with? So then it gives you a good idea of how to connect and market with them. And as clinicians, I think sometimes we focus on that. Right? We go to school, we're getting our master's or PhD, and it's like, you know what? I want to work with couples. So now you're creating this avatar of who you want to work with. So that it makes it a little bit easier to market. And I like what you did, where you kind of just said, you know what, I'm going to 360 that and focus on, who I am, why do I do what I do, and then be able to communicate that with those out there so that they feel a good fit. Let's dive into the psychology today. What do you have on your profile that you think allows you to stand out? Let me know if that makes sense. If not, I'll throw in some more questions that are direct.
Okay, sure. Well, I'd be interested to hear if there's anything that stands out to you, because that's, I always need that mirror, but I can tell you what I put into it was, well, for one is having a good picture. I mean, it's, it is really essential. And I think, there's a way that, of course, it's a little bit about, playing, you want to appear like a professional, and I entirely get the idea of using a selfie or kind of cropping yourself out of a larger picture. Like, a lot of us don't have good pictures of ourselves. I get it,
Yeah.
But it's real. I think it's important to have a picture that looks like you, and it's bright and it's recent enough. And I've been using the same one for about 5 years, so I'm probably about due, but I haven't shaved my beard since then, so it's still okay.
Still okay. Yeah, I agree with that. You need a good picture, because I think that highlights a professional level. It shows that you're investing in yourself, and like you said, it connects to where society is at right now. You and I could be driving down the road and get a flat tire. We're going to pull our phones up and say mechanics near us, and they're going to come up with some pictures of the local ones. And if we see a sketchy picture, we're like, yeah, we're probably not going there. So
Sure.
applying that mentality to the psychology today. Do you have any other pictures on there?
I have a picture of my office.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. You kind of said it nicely earlier that sometimes people are they're in trouble sometimes when they're looking for a therapist. And the advice I always give to people so sometimes I can make a recommendation when someone asks me. Sometimes I don't know anybody in the area, or I don't know anybody who takes their insurance. And my usual advice is go through Psychology Today, look at a bunch of profiles, and just see if anything clicks.
Yeah.
And so being on the other end of that, I would want to put some things on there that'll allow someone somewhere to maybe connect. So maybe it's the way my picture is. Maybe it's something I wrote, but maybe it's also a picture of my office that they can imagine this is a place they could come to. Like, oh, that looks, whatever they want. Cozy, maybe. It looks comfortable, or it looks private, or, some of the things that I would want the office to be. I have a photo that I hope conveys a little bit of that.
Absolutely. I think that, you shared that perfectly, where it's a platform, right? Psychology Today, we pay monthly to market us. And on there, we want to uphold integrity, but it's equally important to provide a picture of the office so that somebody goes, you know what, I could picture myself sitting there. Or
Yeah.
certain words, the way that you phrase them. I help, I don't know, distant couples. And like, you know what, I do feel distant from my partner. So then that
Yeah.
relates to them. And then maybe seeing a picture of you. And they're like, oh man, that beard, he looks like he's experienced and tough and well-groomed. I like that. Even culturally, for myself, I've had different individuals come in and they were like, we appreciate that you're Hispanic or you're in an interracial relationship. People connect and they look for ways to fit. I think that's probably connected to like sociology, right? Is that the study of humans, right? So or communities and culture, right? So when we look at us, we tend to flock to a community. And I think that same relationship takes place whenever anyone in the community is looking for any type of support, whether it's a counselor or your local mechanic.
Yeah, absolutely. But the other thing I just add about psychology today is that, it's a limited place to write. There's not that much space. And that I think that sometimes I see profiles and I can understand that the person wanted to really convey a lot about how they think about themselves in that thing. And some convey very little. It's so much shorthand that it's not accessible. And I think I try to put myself in the shoes of someone who's looking for a therapist and who is often doing so not from a sort of academic perspective, but from that emotional, maybe middle of the night, maybe, over time kind of, what about, saying, what about this person? What about this person? And so I try to include a little bit of something I might say that if you come in, I will probably say this, that's something you can expect to hear. Because plenty of people I see have never been in therapy before. So,
Yeah.
And, a little bit of how I would describe some of the work, but it's mostly evocative language. And that's a stylistic thing. For somebody else, they might say, here's the technique I use, or here's my approach. And they really stick to that model. But I have a different, I come from a different kind of training and I have a more eclectic style, and I'm more interested in relational factors and human attachment. And I can say those things, but it's more something you feel. And so I meant to convey that in my psychology today. And I'd sort of suggest for someone who's writing one to do it and then take some time away from it and read it again and see how it feels. And of course, I'm fortunate because I feel good about my writing. And so I'm able to feel kind of like I'm able to express myself in writing. And I think for someone who doesn't have that part of them, I imagine it would be helpful to take your time with it, but also to have someone else, either a clinician or just someone in your life, want to read it and see what they get from it and give you feedback and sort of ultimately trust that it's by knowing you or working with you that clients will get a sense of whether it's a fit.
Yeah, absolutely. I had one individual current colleague of mine, and he would, whenever a new patient would come in, he would communicate with that patient and say, how did you hear about me? How were you referred? And if they did come to psychology today, he would then ask, well, what about it, made you click, made you want to give me a call? And I thought that was such a neat strategy because, we can write whatever it may be, but then the person making that click, they're going to shed light on what really connected with them. And I love your approach as far as, if you just feel a little bit stuck with writing, reach out to somebody and say, hey, listen, here's the blurb. This is what I got. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. In truth, go ahead.
No, you're good.
Well, I wanted to sort of, just mention that, working in private practice is a funny position because unless you work in a place that has a different setup, your work's happening behind closed doors. That most people, unless they're your clients, won't experience your work, unless you try for them to experience. And, I think one thing that happens is that if for some people, that means you start to worry about what people would think. Mm-hmm. For some, it's that you just feel uncertain about it. because it's hard to observe yourself doing it. And so that's another reason that I just encourage, whether it's you start with something easier like Psychology Today profiles, but there's so many aspects of working in private practice that I'm a huge proponent of saying you got to find other clinicians you can talk to about your work. And it's a great thing about this idea you have, Juan, that's what we're doing,
Yeah.
And this isn't a clinical conversation, and I certainly recommend that people do that. Find places to talk about cases they have and struggles and successes, but that it's essential that we have ways to connect outside of ourselves with other people in the field, and start with the Psychology Today profile and get used to it, maybe in something that seems easy, and then maybe it'll be easier to say, oh no, this happened with this client, and I don't know, was it my problem, or am I not understanding something, or all of that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I remember starting a private practice right out of grad school, and I kid you not how lonely I felt sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, you close the door and it's like, you're in there and you're building the most beautiful relationship and getting to know amazing people. But there's so many regulations and rules as far as, we know all of those. And you're right, clinicians out there, if we could borrow your ears for a little bit, making sure that you're building relationships. I don't think any of us know how to help everyone. But, you could be over there helping a couple, and then the couple could struggle with anxiety. And then you could say, you know what, Juan's a good fit for the husband that's struggling with anxiety. And then maybe I'm working with the husband and they have a teenager, and their teenager is struggling with eating disorder. And then it's like, Sally, she's going to be a good fit for your teenager. And then now we are all as a community supporting the community that we are part of. So I love
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah. Well, and you're mentioning something that, your earlier question about how I market and how I end up with clients. It's been interesting, so I moved to Asheville only last summer from Philadelphia. And I had gone to grad school in Philadelphia. I had lived there for 10 years. I had worked there quite a bit. So I mostly got clients in Philadelphia by people already knowing who I am. And sometimes through Psychology Today or something else, but mostly kind of more what you're describing. People saying, I know Jeff from this or that, and he might be a good fit, and talk to him. And, here I've needed to build up from scratch, from being a stranger, new in town. And, here in Asheville, I think there's this lovely thing of, they call it an abundance mindset when it comes to clinicians knowing one another and not feeling competitive with one another for the work of seeing clients. And so I've had the experience here of just hustling my way through coffee dates and networking events and, trying to show up fit bodily to these things, which is something that I wouldn't do if I didn't, I maybe would not choose to do that, but I knew it was essential. It was what I kept hearing was, oh, you should meet this person, or you should meet that person, and that there's this openness here in Asheville and hopefully in other cities, but to people saying, oh, you're new, I'd like to meet you, or tell me about your work and this and that. And as we were saying, it's people's sense of you that lets them feel like the therapy with you might be worth their presence and time and money and energy. And to me, it's making a personal connection with another clinician, or with, I'm getting to know some lawyers, or some people who work at rehab clinics, or people who work at hospitals, or, people who are going to be the ones asked for a therapist. And I want that person to know me a little bit, so they can say, oh, who comes to mind is Jeff.
Absolutely. I love that. I mean, you threw so much in there, so many gold nuggets, being able to connect with different referrals other than just clinicians, attorneys, people at, hospitals and clinics, being able to, I guess, being able to split that mindset. We are clinicians. We did study psych and counseling and mental health related books. But then when it comes to private practice, we kind of need to say brain, separate a little bit,
Yeah.
business mindset
Yeah.
and clinical mindset, but still feel authentic, be able to do what we're comfortable doing. I think some of us, we may not be 100% into writing our own psychology today. So then we reach out to a friend and say, hey, listen, can you do this? Or even a copywriter, hiring somebody
Yeah.
to do that for us. Jeff, I could talk to you for days upon days upon days. Before we close up, I want to take a little bit of time to give you space to share where your practice is at. I know it's in Nashville, how
Sure.
people can contact you, and maybe be able to work with you in the future.
Sure. Great. So yeah, as I said, I'm in Asheville, North Carolina. One component of my work is that I do a fair bit of my work over video. And that's in part because I had a private practice where I lived in Philadelphia, and I wasn't going to say goodbye to those clients. And thankfully, technology allows that we can maintain it by doing therapy via video. So I see a number of people here in Asheville in person, but if there's someone out there who really thinks I'm a good fit and really wants to explore working with me at a distance, that's something I'd be happy to talk to them about and to see if it might work for us. So, you know, people who might want to work with me, there are a couple of ways. There's my website is a good place to start. As I said, that's kind of it's always over progress, but it's a fuller sense of, you know, what I would say about my practice and who I am.
What's the name of the site?
So my website is jeffbeerslmft.com. So
Perfect.
EFFBEERSLMFT.com. And that's a good way to find me. My name is pretty easy to remember. It's Jeff with a J, J-E-F-F, and beers like beer, so easy enough.
Perfect.
And you can find me in Psychology Today. You might have to search in Asheville, but it's Jeff Beers that way. And I mean, overall, I'm grateful to be able to kind of share more of my work and myself, and to get to know you a little better, Juan. And thank you so much for the chance to talk about all this.
Yeah, no, it's been amazing. I am going to, I really want to have you here again. You went into the topic of virtual therapy. And I think that's something that a lot of clinicians, especially the younger ones, are really getting into, just trying to figure out how to navigate it, how to communicate it effectively. So we're definitely going to do that, hopefully in the near future. Jeff, it's been amazing. I enjoyed this time, 2 men, 2 beers, getting to know each other, talking about your journey as a counselor.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks so much. And I hope you have a great day of work and life, and we'll talk again.
All right. You too, man. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.